What's up, everyone? Welcome. We are live right now to the CannaBuzz community. And if you are watching this on YouTube, what's up, YouTube? Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. We've got more great videos on the way. But this one today is going to be a great one. We are joined by Michigan Matt. He's a grower up in Michigan who has a rec grow. And so we're going to be learning all about what's it like to create a rec grow. And then we're going to be getting into grow talk, all sorts of things. So stay tuned for that. We've got a lot of great discussions ahead. But first off, I've got some shout outs that I need to get to. First off, shout out, like I just said, the CannaBuzz community. We're broadcasting live out to everyone on that community. It's an exclusive live only to the community there. So shout out to all of our members. If you want to become a CannaBuzz member, go to CannaBuzz.app in your browser or search for CannaBuzz in the App Store and use the code GROWERSLOVE for 50% off your first month. It helps support the show and helps us keep going and keep CannaBuzz alive. So we really appreciate it. Also, shout out to our friends over at Grove Bags, or otherwise known as Terploc. Grove Bags are a great way to cure your weed. They have these great bags that are in all different sizes that cure your weed to perfection. I've got one right here. This is their glass jar, and I put some weed in it. A friend of mine I met at a event the other day. She just broke off some tree. It's a root beer cut that she had, and I said, "You've got root beer from Mean Gene?" So she put it in a bag, and I'm carrying it right here. And look how nicely sized this is. Way easier to store, put it somewhere than a glass jar. So check out grovebags.com. Use code CannaBuzz for 7% off your order. We'd really appreciate it. Let them know that you came from here. And then lastly, shout out to our friend TikiMadMan over at TikiMadMan.com and TikiSeeds.com. And as always, we've got a shout out to our man TikiMadMan. What's the announcement this week, JR?
This week, it's a collab that he did with Mosca Seeds, and it says he has the Loco El Bandito pack. It's a 5-pack with a bunch of goodies in it. He's got some watermelon blast. He's got some runts de frutas, pineapple whip S1s, a lot of pineapple punk, which is a good one. It's a C99 backcross with a pineapple whip. So it should produce some really like interesting, fruity, pineapple-y type, exotic type flavors. And if you buy the box set at Neptune Seed, you get also a TikiMadMan little action figure. And you also get a free pack of Watermelon Rush 2.0. So you get those at NeptuneSeeds.com or TikiSeeds.com. And
Sweet.
the little dude's kind of cool. I actually want one.
Nice. Well, huge shout out once again to all of our supporters. They help make this place possible. But let's get into the show. Let's get into it. Once again, we're joined today by Michigan Matt. If you haven't watched it, we actually had a great interview with Michigan Matt right around the beginning of this year. I think the video is called something like How to Start a Michigan Grow in 2023 or something like that. So watch that one. It's up on our YouTube channel just a few months ago. So totally relevant today. But we're going to be jumping in even deeper with Michigan Matt. He's got, like I said, a rec grow in Michigan. He's started this up from the beginning. We're going to be talking all about grow, getting into it. This guy grows some dank weeds, so I'm pretty stoked to learn all about it. Welcome to the show, Michigan Matt.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Happy to be back.
Good to have you,
Welcome,
man.
Matt. Glad to have you here, man. It's good to catch up. There's a lot of exciting stuff has happened since we've last talked.
Okay, it's a new season. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. So when we kind of left off, things were just gearing up to hit market. You were kind of doing some of the dialing in, getting things ready. Kind of talk about where Waverly is now, what's going on, and talk about kind of getting into that first launch.
Well, I'm happy to bring this to the public for the first time with you guys. We are actually going to rebrand. We're moving away from the name of Waverly, and we are going to the name Faded. So for those people in Michigan or people coming to Michigan looking for our flower, that's where you're going to be able to start finding us in dispensaries. So Faded going forward, everybody can stay faded. But that said, yeah. So I think our episode last ended with our first crop in our dry room. So like we were just about to pull that. So that went very successfully. We've had roughly 5 harvests since. So our 4 harvests is April still. So everything's been going really well. We're going to get into a lot of different market details and things like that, but our product is in high demand, which is always a good thing. It's not going to be something that just comes and goes overnight. We are looking to be long lasting, and the fact that we're having the turnover rate and the successful turnover rate that we are, it's just very encouraging for the future for us.
So like when you're hitting the market with those first strains, what were some of those flavors that you really first hit them with?
So we have 16 strains with us now. The first few crops, I gotta think back now. So we definitely like to lean towards these gassy more garlic strains. Our accelerant is something we're very proud of. That was a tester handed out by Harry Palms and Bloomseed. It's ChemDog by Sour Garlic Cookies. And when the pack came, he sends his testers out as like A9. So this one was just labeled A9. You didn't know what the cross was. It's just here's 3 seeds. Have at it. It's the gas and the pungent and the burnt rubber smell off. This is just perfect. It checks all the boxes for us. It tests, which unfortunately with the Michigan market, still testing matters as far as percentages. That one can hit up to 30% overall. So we're very excited about that. We're excited that we're the only ones in the state with that. That said, also I think, and you could possibly correct me with this, that we're the only ones in the state with Cherry Paloma, and Cherry Paloma is actually our most requested flower. So we had only brought one run of it to market, and so we unfortunately where we are with the market right now, and not unfortunately for the guy who does it, but we use a broker who helps us just kind of middleman our product out, because that's not something I can really dive into with my schedule. But he said of all the strains, that's the one he gets called back for the most, and it's like blowing his phones up. So we're extremely grateful to have that, and it's doing really well over here.
Well,
that's really good.
That's really awesome to hear. So I guess you mentioned just right there from the jump that, you've only been around for not that long and you already have strong demand for the product. Can you talk about like, how did you do that? It's more than just getting a great strain,
hey, all right,
or whatever.
We are caregiver crafted cannabis, straight up. Like that's who we are, what we are. That was our roots. Like I started as a caregiver back in 2009 and pushed my way through harvest after harvest and hour after hour in the garden. I did some math at some point, maybe last year, where I'm well over 250 harvests under my belt. I'm well over 20,000 hours in the garden. These are the experiences and the things that you just can't teach. It's time, it's effort, it's trial and error, it's learning. I had someone ask me, my stepson actually asked me, to write down everything that I could so he can learn everything that I can. And I'm like, I can't. Like there's certain things you can't, right? There's the sensing, right? There's using all your 5 senses when you walk into a room and knowing that it doesn't feel right because the humidity's off, or it's too hot, or it smells wrong, then there's root rot going on, or there's botrytis or whatever. There's all the different things that go into it that you can't just like say that this is what makes me successful. No, it's the collection of the entire system. I think we got into like systematic thinking the last time we talked to, and it's the entirety of the entire system. Everything has to be operating in its max capacity and its peak performance in order to produce the flower that we're looking for. And sometimes, unfortunately, we do take a sacrifice in yield, which it does not help our bottom line, because we are still a business that tries to be in business, and it's in a very competitive market. So some of the strains doesn't necessarily hit the yield threshold, but it hits the flavor, it hits the terpene, it hits the overall, or maybe the percentages. It's something that at least the consumer keeps coming back for.
Yeah.
So we do take like
Yeah.
little hits here and there in order to make sure that we can increase the quality to the highest peak that it
Yeah.
can be.
I just go ahead, Q.
Yeah, sorry, JR. Because I'm so impressed by what you're saying, that you just got strong demand from the get-go. And so I just want to double click on that, and then obviously we'll get more into the grow and everything like that. But because it's just, that's no small feat. And so I just love, for anyone who's listening or watching, I would love could you give them some tips? Like, you grew some great flower, and that's no small feat in and of itself. It takes so much, just like you said, 20,000 hours or whatever it was in the garden. You grow some dank flower. How did you get it to the shelves, to get it, or whatever it was? You got someone to smoke it, and then they come back and they want to buy some more. Like, how did you connect all those dots?
To be completely transparent, our first two harvests weren't sold. Our first harvest just sat there, and it was really because nobody had tried us yet. We were new, we were emerging, so we had to bottom out our price to $800 a pound, which is extremely tough in this market when we're trying to stay competitive and we're trying to make a profit still, right? We still have wages to pay, we have electric bills to pay, we have things that we have to pay. And like for me, I'm a Canna user, so Canna is not the cheapest nutrient on the market. I could go to a lot of different companies and get free nutrients. I'm sure I could. I've already been offered it, but that's not my style and where I'm looking to go with my product. Canna is one thing that has kind of pushed me to, I believe, bring out the flavors and things that I'm looking for. And it's a very clean product, and I'm not paid by Canna, so this is not an advertisement. This is just me spitting. But like those first couple harvests, we really had to take a hit on. We really did not make much money off them, if we made literally much at all. But once we finally got that product on the shelf and we were able to have somebody come in and buy something for cheap, and then they kind of taste it, hopefully the bud tenders are starting to see it. They're the ones that first intake it and start to see it. So if they're seeing it and they're liking it, then they're going to start pushing that a little bit more. But really, like if you want to relate it, go back and kind of turn back and go talk about like the growing aspect of it that like really kind of can set us apart. It's all in the transition of final flower into harvest, like at harvest time, harvesting your plants at your day 63, 68, 56, wherever you're at. And then that period between then and the time it hits the market. And that is the extremely crucial period. I mean, you have to make sure that you're checking all the boxes, you're burping your flower, your dry room's at 100% of where you're looking for it to be. So that flower, when it finishes just like it was on the plant. It tastes, it has the same aromas.
I think that's kind of something that's going to win the day in the end. And I've said this all along. And I read an article just yesterday that was projecting, as we move into the year 2025, that the cannabis brands that put out the quality are going to be the ones that stand out and have longevity over the glass houses that build acres of booth. You know what I mean? Because I think your state and my state alone can kind of attest to what it's like to have literal tonnage sitting around doing nothing but getting put into giant burn piles. I mean,
that's what we're seeing with $200 to $400 pounds around here. Like that's why these dispensaries can offer $50 ounces. And honestly, like between the three of us, I'm sure we all probably feel the same way. But I don't know how to grow flower that bad. Like I just don't know how to. Like if I tried to grow like really bad flower, I don't know if I could. I don't know if it's just part of who I am as a person, or just my experience up to now where I'm at now. But like it's hard to make that translation. And like to back up my numbers too, like that we are one of the highest turnover rates. We're seeing it from our $800 pound. We're now 5 harvests in, and now we're at 1,100, between 1,000 and 1,100. So we're seeing a price increase, which is really good. We're seeing that all of our product is selling out within a week of it coming up, and we're talking like 100 pounds of product. And we're looking like, and the good thing, like I said, we have 16 strains right now, which we need to start expanding that more. But we're not redundant with our strains. We're only coming down with 10 or 15 pounds ish of each strain, which is allowing us to kind of control our own supply and demand curve. Or like when you have a mom and pop who only wants 1 pound of product, they're at least buying 7 pounds because they have 7 different strains that are available.
Yeah, that's kind of the model that that Q and I have been kind of talking about from the very beginning, is kind of that micro grow. The ability to manage every aspect of it, like you said. And I think if we can slimline that bureaucracy a little bit and allow that product to get to the shelf in a safe but quick way, because we all know those volatile terpenes are very volatile. And at the end of the day, a lot gets lost in time and transition. And so if we can build that kind of craft community in our within our states and within our government, then we can start kind of like putting out something that I think everybody can be proud of, you know?
Yeah, and to kind of build off of that, if you are a commercial cultivator and you're trying to survive in a tough market, you have to figure out ways to control your own supply and demand. And to do that, either you got to grow really high-end flower, you got to keep your quantities low, you have to be diverse and hopefully be able to get out to a lot of different dispensaries who will want your product. So fortunately with Michigan, fortunate, unfortunate, whatever, there's a lot of dispensaries here. But so for somebody like me, where I can just like pound out 15 different, like I said, 1 pound to 15 different dispensaries, and all of a sudden that whole strain's gone, and hopefully they buy 7 at a time. It's not that as hard to do, I should say, especially if you have the flower that can back it up. Now, again, like going back, THC is still a driving factor in this market. Our market, yes, is evolving and getting a little bit better, but the numbers still have to translate. And for instance, our very first test of it was GMO. It came back at like 32% overall, and this was our very first harvest, first name on the batch. And the lab said they had to retest it because they can't allow a first harvest or first time grower to have numbers that high. So they had to well, it's not that they can't allow it. They had to retest it. They had to retest it. Well, because the labs are independently run as well. So they have to make sure that they're covering their ass. So they see 32% out of this first time grower. Let's retest it just to make sure that it was right. So the state doesn't say, hey, what's going on here? This raises a red flag.
Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense. I mean, I guess it makes sense. But yeah, so that's great. And so now what are some of the kind of goals as you're moving into the new brand Faded, and you're moving into the summer season? What's kind of like the boots on the ground plan to kind of get your stuff out there?
So we're doing a really good job bulking our flower out right now and getting it out to the consumers and getting them hopefully a little bit more familiar with what our product is. So we're you could call this almost like a soft launch. We're like softly launching the brand. We're hoping midsummer we're going to do like a hard launch. Excuse me. And we're going to throw some sort of launch party, because fortunately in Michigan now we do have social places you can go and smoke and consume and have parties. So we're looking to put some sort of party like that together where we can bring in a lot of different growers that hopefully would like to join the party, as far as like advertising for themselves and sponsoring for the party, but just really kind of get us out there and start pushing that, so that way we can start transitioning hopefully more into pre-packing. So that would be like our second goal getting into the summer. Now that we have the name, we can start looking at labels and things and packages that would work well for us. And getting into pre-packaging then is going to, obviously it raises your bottom line because your labor is going to go up. But if we continue to maintain our product and are able to build a good brand, we should see relatively higher numbers when it comes to pre-packing, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. And that's kind of like the end goal, right? Is to be kind of like that, shelf commodity, labeled, branded.
I want to be, so my end goal is to to be on the top shelf and not necessarily be flashy. I don't want this is just me, and I obviously have a team around me, and some people might in the team want to see something like that, so it might go that way. But I want something that's going to like drive home the more luxury experience, the unboxing experience, the really like, you get this really nice packaging, but really inside of it, the flower actually backs it up too.
Right.
It's really good flower that goes with it. So that's kind of where I'm at. Hopefully that's where our summer is going to kind of take us. But we're trying to put this plan together properly. Fortunately we're selling our bulk for higher than where we were. So we're making a little bit more money, which is going to allow us to buy a little bit higher end packaging and stuff like that.
Nice. Well, I guess we should start talking some grow. We've been going for a while here, and I think people have been ready for some Grove talk.
Let's go.
So let's get to it. Q, why don't you start this one off?
Sure, definitely. Let's see here. So, um, last we talked, you vegged under certain 350 Rs. Those are lights, right, JR? So you had a certain light set up. What's your current kind of veg scenario that you guys got going on?
Not much has changed, so we're still running under the 350 Rs. I've actually dimmed those back even a little bit more than where we were at. We were running at max at 87%. Now I'm running them. So when we go clone to 1 gallon, I put them at about 40% for a day or two. So they take in some really low light. And then I'm increasing it roughly 5% every day to every other day. So for instance, we are 9-10 days into our veg cycle from our fresh transplants, and we're sitting at about 65%. So we're making our way gradually up there, but we're doing it slowly over time instead of just impacting them with a ton of light all at once. So that's one thing.
I think that's been a learning curve for a lot of people who have started getting into more powerful LEDs. I mean, and especially away from maybe some of the, bar styles before were not as intense. I know now bar styles are getting intense, but just learning that curve, I think it threw people for a minute. I mean, I think we all kind of went through that. How far off the canopy would you say that you are?
I would say from a 1 gallon that's freshly transplanted, we're probably 4 to 5 feet maybe. And obviously as the plant grows, it's going to be getting a little bit closer to the light. So it's going to obviously increase intensity that way, but also as we are increasing intensity. So it's going to almost double up on that. But yeah, so I mean, we do have to like be careful with our mom plants. Our mom plants, I mean, we grow plants that are 7, 8, 9, 10 feet tall. Sometimes they can produce hundreds of cuts, and so we have to be very careful with how we position our lights over our moms to make sure that they're raised up high enough where they're not getting shot. But again, this is something that comes with experience, as most growers can see. If your plants are looking stressed out, there's a reason they're looking stressed out, right? So what is that reason? Is it because you have too intense light? Is it because your water is too cold? Is it because why? Like, try to point your finger and figure out what scenario might be causing it. And I think that's where a lot of maybe these newer LED growers or people that are transitioning in, they're seeing the stressed plant, but they're not necessarily pointing right at the light to say, hey, maybe it's too intense. Less is more. And if we start and give it a little bit less, then the plants can thrive.
Yeah, my last run, I did a little experiment where I had a Paloma that was in the corner off like 3 feet off the drop off of the edge of the LED. And then I had everything under canopy, and I showed the difference between no direct light at all, just ambient light in the room. And it's still, the expressions were different. It didn't produce as much weight, but the quality of it seemed to be almost a little bit better in the way that it smoked. And as far as weight wise, it was only down like maybe an ounce of what the average of the other ones were.
So if you think about it, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you think about it, like you have, you're putting a lot less stress on the plant, right? So it's allowing the plant to produce the way that it wants to, or like throw the phenotypical expressions that it wants to, where maybe the ones under the lights were actually a little bit more stressed that we didn't even realize. Like we see a lot of drop-offs in the sides of our rooms. Like just around like corners and like, so obviously our lights are stacked in rows. Well, the rows end at some point and there's not the cross light anymore. So you're getting such a drop off on the sides. So it's been a challenge to us to figure out what strains work best in those types of tables. So our 2 outside tables, we have 7 tables in a room. We have to pre-plan what strains are going to go on those outside tables that do best with less light, that will still transpire the way we want them to transpire. So that way they're feeding still on a regular schedule. So these are like a lot of different things that we have to come through. And then once you see that less light drop off too, you're not feeding as often because you're not transpiring as often. So those plants that are along the edges suffer a little bit more. So we have to pay a little bit more special attention to them. We use net FM drip lines. So we're able to actually block the line to like say this plant's not getting food today. And we go through, Brian and I, we go through every single plant in the building every single day and depend on whether that plant or not wants to get fed. Like typically we're feeding every table every day, unless there's a strain that's like on an every other day type schedule, which we have a couple that are. But we're literally going in and feeling the plants by hand. We don't have Arroyo sensors. We don't have dry back sensors or anything. We use our muscle memory, and we do it we do it based on Rasta Jeff's 1 through 5 system. 5 being extremely heavy, like you just got so much runoff off that pot. That thing is like can't hold anything else.
Right.
And 1 being, I'm going to throw this plant out across the road because I just lifted it up and whoa, I didn't realize it was that light. So we use this 1 to 5 scale, and we're shooting for like a 2.5 to 3 to start watering at. So we'll go through with it just through muscle memory and just through touch and feel, and depend on what plant gets fed for the day.
Yeah, and I also always encourage people about timing. What time of the light cycle do you like to read your plants?
So we run 9 to 5. Our operation's 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then on the weekends we're like 9 to 2 or 10 to 2 or 10 to noon. Like it really depends. But so our feeding is based upon our schedule. We're using Tupper from Royal Gold. So Tupper, it holds a lot more water retention than something like maybe Charcoal or something more fibrous would. So it allows us to feed just once a day, if that. If we, like I said, we have a black maple right now that is on an every other day type schedule. So we're feeding once a day, and we're feeding. Typically, we do try to feed in the morning, like first thing when we get there. We go through the rooms. That's our first routine of the day, is go through the rooms, what needs what. Hopefully by lunchtime, 11 o'clock, noon, something like that, all the flower has been fed. So if that's the case, then that's what we'll do. But however, there's some strains that transpire a little bit slower than others. So we might hit 5 tables in this room, but come back later in the afternoon and hit 2 more.
Yeah.
So we feed the plants when the plants are ready to be fed. And I really think that's like something that's lost in translation with crop steering. And I think that's where there's a lot of people that misunderstand the multiple irrigations. So, they're not getting the proper dry backs and then doing the multiple irrigation, or they're in a setting where they're just not getting the transpiration that you typically would get. So people try to emulate this system and then start to overwater, overfeed our plants. And so one thing we all have to watch out for is HLBD, right? So like that's just sitting there latent and it's running rampant across the entire United States. So I'm not saying that we have it, but we have to be careful. And I'll be honest that we haven't tested for it, but we have to be careful not to expose it. And one of the main ways to expose it and to bring it to validity is overwatering. And when we're overwatering, the plants are not getting the good root zone dryback. Or let's put it the other way, underwatering. You could be underwatering or allowing too much dryback. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think a lot of people screw up too, is when they'll hit a huge dryback and they're in that number 1 where that plant maybe isn't droopy yet, but it's so light like it needs to be fed right now. But what they do is they go and they feed the entire plant its entire dose for the day. Where like now you're just take all those root tips and root ends that are just dying off because they were too dried out, and now you just drowned them. So you're exacerbating the problem instead of just allowing a very small feed to that plant first to allow the root zone to wake back up and to get resaturated, not drowned out, and then come back 15, 20 minutes later and give it the rest of its feed. So there's little tricks and things that we do to make sure that if we do hit like too much of an underwatering, and the other thing is we'll dim the lights too. So if we see like a table that's like been way underwatered, we'll dim the lights down, give it a little tease, and then come back, feed it off once the plant starts to prey again. Once we start seeing that prey again and they're starting to come back, then we finish off the rest of the feed.
Well, I think one of the first things that people hear as growers is don't overwater, don't overwater, the first mistake everyone makes is they overwater. And then so you've got a lot of, like you said, growers who are so fearful of that their drybacks are so extreme that, like you said, the plant may look okay, but you pick it up and it's ridiculously dry, and it's just not going to ever hit those hormone levels, those growth potentials. It's always going to be kind of stucky, you know what I mean? And so those are some great pro tips, Matt. We appreciate all of the pro tips. So you talked a little bit about your mothers. What is your kind of NPK strategy for mother feeding, and about how much liquid are they getting per day?
So let me just run you through the entire process, right? So we go clone to 1 gallon, 1 gallon to 3 gallon. When we're making that transition from a 1 gallon to 3 gallon, I'm going through those strains and selecting the 1 or 2 best plants that we have, and those become the moms. So instead of those getting transplanted into a 3 gallon, those get transplanted into a 10 gallon, usually a few days later, so we can really root those out a lot better. So we're getting like a really solid foundation and then going into the 10 gallon. Everything that we feed and how we feed it, it's a tier system. Like we tier up. I think tier is the right word. Where we start at like in a 1 gallon pot, we'll start with like a 250 milliliter scoop, because we measure everything as we're feeding. Especially we hand water veg, so we're hand watering and hand feeding everything. We're walking around with a bucket and a carton feeding these plants. We start with 250 milliliters. By the time that 1 gallon is being transplanted into a 5 gallon or into a 3 gallon, we're looking at like a 450 to 500 milliliters with like 3 or 4 feeds in between. So we've scaled that up a little bit. And then once we get into, like, if we're doing a 1 gallon into a 10 gallon pot and like going into a mom, then we're at about a half gallon of feed for that one mom at transplant. And we'll let that sit like that. That can go 5 days before we water it again. And sometimes longer. I mean, we just have to go in there and lift the pots all the time. By the time they're giants and like ready for cuts, we're at about 2.5 gallons a day in a 10 gallon pot. The NPK strategy stays the exact same as our veg strategy. We don't, so the only time we reduce our veg amount is when we're soaking our clone cubes. We do it at a rate of about 0.8 EC, roughly 0.7 to 0.8 EC. So 350 to 400 milliliters or ppms on the 500 scale. That's the only time we reduce our feed. From then on out, even if we're just dunking our clone cubes, like just to make sure that they're saturated, because we clone in root riots, we're doing it at the full veg feed, which is about 2.5 to 2.6 EC. So we're looking at like 1250 to 1300 ppms.
One thing I also wanted to mention, you had talked about the HLVD thing, and we had just had an episode with Farmer Freeman, and he has the HLVD and another panel virus and viroid testings out for they were $25 a test. So he said if he gets enough volume at that rate, he might keep it at that rate. So it's a really affordable way to make sure your moms are all clean, everything's clean, and like you said, you're good to go.
So here, let me just like run it real quick. So we are a 4-man operation. It's me, Brian, who's my right hand. He can basically run the operation when I'm not there. And we have Jason. Jason's our little grinder, and Avery. Avery's our little grinder, but she does a lot of front office work and packaging and sales and invoicing and that type of stuff too. So in 160 light grow, there's 4 of us. We'll bring in labor for certain things and certain times, but so the point of me saying this is that like we do need to get in HLVD testing. There's certain things that we do need to start accomplishing and start preparing ourselves for and be out in front of. However, with the time that we have right now, running 9 to 5 with the 4 of us, like we try to just do things as efficiently as possible. There's just certain things that have slipped between the cracks. I'll be completely transparent. Our fungus gnat issue got way out of control way too early on, just because I didn't have the bandwidth to attack that problem. Then we went and got more. They're called strapless something now, but like hypoacis miles, right? And we introduced a lot of beneficial insects and started putting fly traps up and doing nematodes and doing a lot more things that can help combat that problem. But just in that time frame with the startup and like trying to balance everything, like there's sorry, I don't mean to get way too sidetracked, but there's priorities, right? Every day we have a list of priorities we have to accomplish, and we have to start tiering those priorities off to the most important, for instance, watering the plants, making sure everything's watered, to the least important, maybe sweeping veg, right? Like, and figure out what that list looks like, having the separate tiers, and then understanding how to attack each one in each type of day or in a week or in a month, right? And now that we're starting to get into a more of a flow and getting a lot more efficient with what we're doing, the crew understands the SOPs, like everything's kind of in place. Now we can start doing things like making sure everything's swept at the end of the day. We can do things like get testing done and making sure that we're safe, getting deeper into IPM and getting more beneficial insects and things like that in.
So talk about, I mean, that's something I guess maybe we didn't really talk about, is talk about your team building and what that means for you as the guy kind of like running the show.
So
I don't care from the growth.
I don't care what business environment, workplace. I don't care if you work at McDonald's. I don't care if you work at Olga's as a restaurant. It doesn't matter where you work, right? Team's everything. And like for a guy like me, if I can have a team in place that can employ my strategies and I am able to delegate like my responsibilities to them, then it allows me to focus my attention on bettering the business in certain ways. For instance, rebranding into Faded, getting these launch parties going, expanding my mind in ways outside of just growing in the growing lane. So team is it's everything. I was gonna curse, but team is everything. Like, and this is me and my philosophy and the way that I run things and the way that I always will. The team will come with me to the top. It doesn't matter what place where I'm at. If I'm running an operation, the team I understand is the driving force behind me. Because if they can't do the things that they're doing, then we can never produce the quality flour that's going to make it to the end consumer. It just can't happen. I can't run a 200 light grow by myself. I need those people behind me that know how to operate the irrigation, who know how to do certain things. So I can focus my attention on having the strongest, healthiest moms, to having the strongest, healthiest veg that flips into flowers. So that way we're producing strong, healthy plants, building those relationships with the dispensaries or with outsiders and the trim crews and everybody else that we bring in. So that way they feel welcome. So not only are we making our own team feel welcome and part of the team and that everybody's together, but every single person that walks in the door gets the same feeling. I don't care if you're a low-end trimmer that we're hiring out as a third party and you're there twice out of every month. I'm going to learn your name. I'm going to learn who you are, and we're going to have a good relationship. I'll buy you everybody lunch from time to time. It's just the type of operation and things that we do in order to create an environment that has good energy and flow. And that's everything too. So having that energy and that camaraderie with your plants and like having energy brought in and everybody's on the positive, you start to see your plants pray. And you can't convince me otherwise at this point that it's the energy that you bring in isn't related to the energy that your plants are taking in, and then vice versa. Like I can sit in a room with a bunch of praying plants and get up on a ladder and just be like, this is it. Like, this is it. And that I'm just feeling their energy, they're feeling mine, and we're all just crushing. And that's the goal at the end of the day, is just continue to crush and continue to be as best off as we can as possible.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we've all worked jobs where you've been at the place where everything's working, you're part of that team environment like you're talking about, you care about what you're doing, and you're just having a good time and everyone's kicking ass. There's a certain energy that exists there. It's just like when you're on a sports team or whatever, and there's just like, it's humming and things are going. And then you contrast that to a job where you don't really give a shit and you're only going to put in so much work. You know what I mean? When it's time to go, you're going to go or whatever. You know what I mean?
I've worked in plenty of toxic environments in the cannabis industry as well. Like not just in other industries. I've worked for people who are complete scumbags, and I would love to call them out, but I won't. And like those types of situations makes me want to be better, because then I can bring in like, and everybody's got shitty home lives sometimes. Why have a shitty home life and then bring it and have a shitty work life too? Let's come into work, all have a great day together. So hopefully when you go home, things are great. Yeah. Let's take the stress away when we come to work instead of adding on. Like, let me take on the stressors of the hard shit, because that's what I'm here for. That's what I get paid for. But like, as far as like us working together, there's no reason for me to be a dick to someone. I'm not going to be. I'm going to walk in there. I'm going to treat everybody with respect, and I'm going to treat everybody as an equal. When we have our team meetings, I try to do the best that I can to check all egos at the door. When we walk into a team meeting, we're all colleagues. We're all one. I'm not a boss. Like, I want to hear your input, because I need to be better too. I get very narrow focused in my own lane and very narrow it in on one path. I need people who are going to expand my brain and allow me to veer off to the left or to the right to see different opportunities and functions.
Well, we don't have, I've always said that in the cannabis industry, we don't have to do business like corporate America. You know what I mean?
No. Why can't we go into work every day and like what we're doing? Exactly.
Even if it is at the end of the day defoliating. And everybody knows that defoliating is backbreaking work, bro. But when you got a crew of people that you enjoy being with, maybe you got some music bumping in the background, everybody's having a good time and it gets done, you know?
We do it
Yeah.
well. Our prunes will last 3-4 days, and we'll go 8 hours a day, and like it can be taxing, especially these 5-foot wide tables where we have 3 rows of plants. So we have a middle plant that we have to get to, and
That's
literally bend
brutal.
underneath the freaking
Yeah.
canopy to get to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can suck, but that only happens once a month, fortunately, and we do it together. Like I'm not below that work. I'm the first one in there to start going because I know that's one of my strengths. I can help us get it done faster. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not. It's getting down on the floor and scrubbing resin off the floor is not below me. You'll see me to be the first one down there to do it, to show everybody else. Hey, look, we're all here to do all the type of the same work.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's good. And so let's get back into some grow talk, bro.
Yeah.
Oh, so as you're in your feeding strategies for flower, are you kind of doing the ramping up, hit them hard, and then kind of flush out at the end, old style, or are you having maybe a different approach in the way?
Are we talking EC or volume?
EC.
EC, so a different way. So we load up as much as we can in veg. So that we're like that 2.5 to 2.6 EC. So we're up to upwards almost at 1,300 ppms with no runoff. And we don't hit runoff until roughly 7 or 8 days into flower. So we're consistently building as much as we can within that media, and we're relying on all that nutrition within the media to continue to feed the plant. Once we hit our first runoff, we're seeing very high runoff ECs, like up to 3.5 sometimes. Like we'll see some really high numbers, especially right off the rip. But what we're doing to counteract that is now we're starting to lower our EC as we get into flower. So as soon as we flip into flower for our first day, or our first day one, we went from that 2.5 EC, and now we're down to like 2.1. So we're at like 1,050. So day one, boom, immediately we're cutting back. And we're sitting there for roughly 10 days or so before we do another dial back, where we're down to like 1.8 now. So we're at like 890 to 940, 1.8 to 1.9 or so. And then after another week, we do the same thing and we'll drop it down again. And another tip, I guess you could say, when we do these, some people like to do these like mid-cycle flushes or whatever, a CalMag flush or a straight water flusher. So we do these flushes as well, but our flushes consist of a very low EC feed. So we're still feeding the same base or the same line that we typically be feeding. We're just doing it at a far lower EC for one feed. So if we're seeing like a 3.5 EC still at like day 18, day 19, day 20, then we might come in with like a 1 EC feed or like a 0.8 EC feed for just one feed with a typical runoff that we're normally getting, but we're just reducing the amount of feed that the plant's getting. So we're doing a couple things here. One, we're saving money because we're not doing a full EC feed for that entire day. So we're saving money on nutrient costs. Two, we are then taking that 3.5 EC that may have been in the media, and now we're reducing that down a lot faster than where we were if we were just doing it at like, if we're still feeding at like 1.7, let's say at that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we continue to reduce this. When we're in the 30s, so the peak PK times, we're sitting at like 1.4 EC roughly, and we're still reducing it. We're still going down, and then in the day 40s, we're at roughly 1 to 1.2, and then roughly day 40 to, I'd like to do it about 18 days before harvest, which we are harvesting 63-day cycle. So this is about day 48 or so. We'll introduce winter frost, and we'll do that for 2 feeds at 10 mils per gallon to heavy runoff. And then from then out, we switch out to just straight water.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about that. So the straight water, and hopefully I didn't talk about this on last episode and I'm being redundant, but the whole straight water thing. So that's obviously relative to some people in these flushing arguments. For me, what I do with straight water is it's twofold. One, I'm really reducing the amount of EC within the media so I can get those plants to ripen off the way that I want to see them, so they start consuming themselves, and you'll start seeing a better fade. But the other reason is to save money. So now I'm cutting 2 weeks worth of nutrient costs out of my program. And on scale, when we're looking at competing in markets and we're looking at $800 a pound from time to time, I have to make little cuts to hopefully lower our bottom line, but still maintain our yields. So our yield threshold, let's say, is like 2.5 a light. So as long as we're still hitting that 2.5, but I can reduce certain things in certain areas, then I'm reducing my bottom line in other ways besides getting like free nutrients, right? So that's one way to do it. Another way that I really like to do is shutting my lights off 10 minutes early. That's something that I've been big in now for a couple of years. Over the course of a year, I'm saving about 4 days worth of power. And all I'm doing is like when you walk into the room 10 minutes before lights out, the plants are already sleeping. Like you see the really like stressed out, like tired looking plants. It's because they've hit their DLI in the day. So why don't we just cut the lights off when they're ready to be, when the plants are ready to go to bed? And now I'm saving power costs over the course of years too.
Yeah, and so did you ever experiment with the 11 and 13 towards the like say week 5 on or any of that?
I haven't gone deep into any other type of like 12-12 experiments. The one that I will run and that I'm gonna try here soon. So before I can like really do experiments in a new grow, I have to set a baseline, right? We have to set the baseline and know where we're at. So we did the exact same thing for the first 6 harvests, just so we can have a normal baseline, so we know where our normal lines are at. So that way, when we make changes, we can see how we veered from that line. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So now once we get our six harvests in, now one of the things I want to do is I want to try Rasta Jeff's 18-6 during the last week of flower, where you just run those and really boost them up to see if that really does do a massive yield increase or not.
When you test that, are you going to do it in a small space? Or are you going to do the whole, do the whole thing, or what?
Yeah, there's no small space. Yeah, it's either all or no. Like I got two flowering rooms. Both rooms are 48 lights, so I can't like just take a section of the room and throw up a tarp. You know, I'm gonna run it, and it's gonna be run through the entirety of the whole.
And so, talk a little bit about the type of lighting that you're using in flower, and some of your strategies behind using the type of lighting that you are.
So we're still in double-ended HPSs, and it's not because I'm against growing LED in flower, because I'm definitely for it. It's more because it's a tried and true method for me. I know what to expect with it. So when I build my projections for the entire company for the year, or the year before we open, I can do it at a relatable clip. Where like if I brought LEDs in, sure, I could do the math to get myself to a relatable clip, but I don't know if that's 100% what I can do. My accuracy is very good, I guess you could say. When it comes to like projecting out how much for plants I need in a certain amount of square foot, or how much water I'm going to need in a day. Like for instance, like way out in advance. I kind of lost my train of thought in this, but so LED growing, right? So it's not that I'm like against LED growing or like trying and doing LEDs. And I think in the future, if we do expand, we will open a room of just LEDs so I can try one room at a time. But just for the operation that we have, HPS was the smart way to go. And then some people argue, well, with your winners, you know, isn't HPS kind of the way to go? And it's like, not really, because the outside environment really shouldn't matter to what I'm doing inside. If I have everything controlled properly, no outside environment should be playing an impact on what is going on inside. Unfortunately, when the sun's hotter, it's going to play a lot of more impact than when it's colder, just because ambient air and the way that affects buildings. But I should have enough heating or cooling in order to drive any type of light that I'm looking to run. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And so, just kind of throwing it out there, what kind of brand do you prefer with the double-ended?
I'll go with any of them. We have Lux only because Lux is what was in the building when I took over the project.
All right,
Lux is down or under now, but for us, the lights work. It's really the fixture doesn't matter to me. It's the bulb. The bulb is everything, because the bulb's what is producing the spectrum.
And the bulb you use is?
I typically prefer Hortilux still.
Nice, beautiful. Yeah, they're always the tried and true for sure. And
to be honest,
the best room I've ever seen as far as like the health and quality of the flower was a room that was checkered, double-ended LED, and it was rows all the way down the whole shit. And it just felt like a beautiful spectrum. And I mean, it was a thriving, probably the most beautiful, thriving room I've ever seen.
We have actually, so I was talking earlier about like corners of rooms that get really shaded and dark because of the way the lights are set up. Well, the back of our rooms are the way that the lights were set up, that our backs don't get much light. So like our back, like 2 to 4 plants in every table. Our average wet weight might be around like 850 to 950 a plant, and like the back tables in those scenarios would be at like 250 to 450 grams, because they're getting no light and they're not transpiring and they're getting overwatered, and we're constantly having to plug them. So we do have capabilities. Actually, we want to get into and add an extra row of LED in the back of that room, so we can bring some supplemental lighting in to increase, because we don't need another HPS in that spot. That's going to be way too much light. What we need is a 350 watt light, like 350Rs. That's just going to bang out a little bit of supplemental light to help those back plants produce a lot more than what they were.
Yeah, I think that's a good strategy. And the 350s are pretty versatile lights as far as that goes, you know. Yep. I did the 650Rs, and then now I did the 750R Diablo. And to me, when I flowered, the lighting was a little intense, so I thought it kind of seemed almost like a ceramic metal halide or a metal halide-ish type flower, super frosty, but not quite the bulk that I'm usually used to. So I've dialed them down a bit this round. We're going to see how that goes. And yeah, like you said, when you're at a bottom line, you can't really play around with a lot of variables when you have numbers that you're projected, especially in such a volatile market. You know, as we talked a little earlier, things seem to be kind of moving in a better direction as far as that goes.
But when you have new business partners too, you want to be able to perform to what you put on paper.
Yeah.
And if you can, then like for me, like I had to bring HPS with me. I know I could do LED and veg because that's what I'm familiar with, but bringing HPS with me into flower is something I'm also familiar with, and I can replicate those numbers. I can take 3 years of data that I had built under HPS lights in similar rooms and translate that data so that I can say, hey, look, this is what I can do, and then go and do it, because I can back it up too. Oh. There you go.
I'm off.
There you go. We're back.
I'm off. We're back. Excellent, Matt. Well, this is really good. So now, when you're kind of at the point to where you're getting things moving onto the shelf, the whole production system is kind of getting into its groove. What are some of the strategies in bringing in variety that kind of keeps people enticed into your offerings? What are some of those avenues and things that you're looking forward to?
So this is somewhere that I slack big time. Like I'm not good at keeping up. I mean, I don't know who can keep up with all the strains all the time, everywhere, but that's just like one part of the business that I need somebody else to kind of help shift and direct me in, so I can be like, you know, they're like, here, check this out, and so I can be, oh yeah, that looks good, let's try that. There's certain breeders that I get behind personally, that I like their way that they do business, or the way that they perform, or the way that the success that I've had in the past with them, Bloom Seed being one of them. The amount of consistency that I get with them out of a single pack of seeds is enough for me to continue to go back. Plus, he likes things that wash really well, which again translate really well, and then share with a lot of the same like terpene profiles and stuff that I enjoy. So doing stuff like that, reaching out to people like JR that are maybe having some other clones that, you know, they had some really good success with, and being like, hey, you know, how can we incorporate this into with us too? And like, obviously we love to give proper credit. So if somebody like JR gives us Cherry Paloma, and let's say we win something with it, JR is going to get, like, he's going to be mentioned as part of the person that found that cut. You know, like, it's important for me to honor and to work honorably and admirably, and give people the credit that where the credit's due, if that makes sense. So we do need to start bringing some more things in. I have a big seed collection that we could definitely crack into and get into some older stuff. But then, you know, you kind of still have to keep up with the Joneses and with what's going on right now. So it's a delicate balance. Maybe I pop one old thing, but I have to bring something new in as well, you know?
Yeah, because I think that, as you mentioned before, with there being so many breeding options, so many different varieties out there, I've always said there's going to be less of the ones. You know what I mean? There's maybe always going to be the ones that are bangers that are people are talking about, but you got to look, the South is going to be coming online. The whole East Coast is coming online. It's not just going to be California and the West Coast that is producing a bulk of the strains that are coming out that people want. It's going to be coming from everywhere. And so I think the uniqueness in the flavor profile and the quality is the thing that people such as yourself will want to start chasing. And really, quality and flavor at the end of the day. I mean, we've been around enough to know that that's the thing that, you know, really gets us going. And I think over time, people will start getting more and more on board with that rather than the $50 ounce that they may have to smoke half of just to fucking get where they want to be. You know what I mean?
We were talking earlier about frozen grapes. This is a strain that I'm kind of into right now. And like as this was growing throughout the cycle, I'm like, this isn't really checking any of the boxes. Like I don't know how I feel about this. But then when it got done, it's like all I've been smoking for the last few weeks. Like I'm just on it. So it's like, first of all, it shows practice patience. Like let the flower finish before we make any judgments or characteristics about them.
Yeah.
Second thing is like, where was I going with this? Oh, finding plants that work within our systems.
Yeah.
Right. And like selecting within our systems. Because like if Q doesn't like to trellis his stuff and he likes to grow the bigger, bushier outdoor plants, then there's going to be certain strains that are going to do really well for that. Where like me, when I'm indoor and trellising, certain strains that stretch a lot more are like super advantageous for me because I can work with those within trellises and fill tables and do things like where like the frozen grapes, it wasn't checking those boxes for me immediately, but then the flower at the end is like, okay, so I do have to continue to run this. Now, how can I make this work within my system? Yeah. And so like, for instance, one of the strains that we have is black maple. It's another hairy palms, but it was a pheno that I found that it's, I don't think OGKB is part of it, at least so they don't say OGKB is part of it, but it has a lot of those like duck foot, really runty growth kind of characteristics, but it produces the best flower. Like it is just amazing flower. So I have to figure out a way to take this runty plant and allow it to still fill my tables. So I'm getting my grams per square foot still. So typically we're running 57 plants per cycle, or per table, per strain. And with this one with black maple, we're at 69 because we just had to fill the rest of the table up because I knew that they weren't going to stretch. I knew that they weren't going to fill, but I know that I could make up some of that with packing more plants in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and so that's something, as you know, offering clones, I'm trying to do is keep in mind that a lot of the people in my community are tent growers. So like I'm doing a lot of these George apple pies and the slushies. A lot of those are pretty short, stout, hold their own weight kind of varieties. Yeah. Whereas like people are really hot on the Paloma, but I'm thinking, man, if you don't flip that early enough in a tent, you're going to be in trouble really fast.
Yeah, Paloma stretches hard. Not as hard as our chocolate dip banana. We have we have them side by side in a room right now. Maybe I'll take a picture and post it tomorrow. But we have cherry Paloma and chocolate dip banana side by side. And Paloma is one of our bigger stretchers, along with GMO. And the Paloma looks like a midget compared to the chocolate dip banana. Like that thing just took off. And that one is dual OG by Gorilla Butter White Truffle, like the Gorilla Butter male. Like it just took off and it is just monstrous. So yeah, you have to be be careful of certain things like that. So another thing we did with that black maple, I knew they were going to take a long time to veg. So I cloned those a week earlier than everything else, or 10 days earlier than everything else. So I gave them an extra week of veg time in a 1 gallon before we started catching everything else up with them.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good strategy too, because I would recommend that as well with the ones I mentioned. If you give them a two week extra veg, it's going to pay dividends in the end, you know.
Where like Paloma, if you're a tent grower, maybe you wait 2 weeks, wait till you transplant it and then make those cuts to keep that plant smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. And so now, have you had an opportunity to wash any of your strains and see what any of your returns like? Or
I have on the caregiver side, not on the commercial side. So on the commercial side so far, we have been 100% to flower. So everything's been flower trim. And we're saving our trim. We have a processing lab that should be opening within the next month or so. We'll see. But Yeah, so we haven't got official numbers, but I've done some backdooring with some caregivers and stuff that not backdooring, like caregiver stuff that have run it, and we do see some numbers. The best I probably have is my sour garlic did like 4.8% to wash and like 3.9% to rosin or something like that.
Nice, beautiful. That's good. I mean, obviously, at some point, you'll want to have integration on all of that. You know, from
So yeah, we
Go
talked.
ahead.
Sorry, we talked really quick about supply, controlling your own supply and demand. So that's another way to
Yeah.
do it. If I'm now freezing 7 of the 15 pounds that I was taking to the market, now I'm only coming to market with 8 pounds. Now I can say, well, I'm sorry, I got 15 dispensaries that want 8 pounds of flour. It's going to be 1,500 a pound, or it's going to
Yeah.
be, you know what I mean? That's how
Yeah.
you control your own supply and demand.
Yeah, that's smart. We had a question from the live chat that I wanted to bring in, and then I also had a question that came from me that I wanted to ask. But we'll get to the one from the live chat first. So, let's see. First off, shout out once again to all of our CannaBuzz members in the live stream chat. We've got a bunch of folks in there. James Cannabis, Big Sips, Big Bad Badger, Psych Doctor 74, Cat Lady, a bunch of others. Shout out to you all. But this one came from Big Sips. He asked you, Michigan Matt, and JR, if you want to jump in too. Do you guys use plant yo-yos at all to like prop up your plants?
No.
And they asked if they were, yeah.
So in certain situations, sure, maybe it would work out. In my situation where we have 400 plants in a room, we're not gonna yo-yo all of them. What we do is we do a first layer of trellis. So we bring our plants into the flowering room. We lay down the first layer of trellis within the first day. We let them grow in at that layer. We're trying to aim for a branch per square. So we're spreading them out, doing what we can to get a branch per square. Once we feel like that table's then filled with that first layer, we bring our second layer in. Our second layer, we start spreading out a little bit more. That could be a layer where we're starting to transition into like doing more super cropping or doing some weaving or some other types of strategies, depending on the strain. If the strain's a real stretchy one like Cherry Paloma, then we might go into the third layer and wait to start doing like our weaving or our things to try to do for canopy control.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So the question I had for you just came to mind after listening to your just experience growing and the kind of science that you've got everything down. And so I was curious what your thoughts were on kind of the scalability of cannabis. So I was talking to a grower a couple weeks ago. He's an outdoor grower. We were at an event for 420, and we were talking about these giant grows that are down in California. There's one, Glasshouse Farms in Santa Barbara, that I think is the largest cannabis grow in the world, if at least in North America. It's gigantic. They've switched over these gigantic tomato glass houses basically, and they're switching them over to cannabis grows. So right now the quality isn't really there. They're selling $150 pounds profitably. That's what they're doing. I'm just so where my question is, what are your thoughts are? Is there a scalability limit on kind of the quality of cannabis, or is there going to be a time where eventually these gigantic glasshouse fields figure out how to grow good weed? Or yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I mean, anybody can grow good weed, so let's just throw that out there. That comes with a little bit of passion and heart and determination. The big scale, like as you talk about, those types of people have different philosophies than the littler guys. The littler guys should be focusing on more on like quality produced products, where the bigger guys are producing biomass, just straight shit that's going to be like that they can go get a pack of Marlboros in California, they can go get a pack of Marlboros in Virginia, they can go get one in New York, they can get one in Florida, and it's going to be the exact same Marlboros that they got all the way across the country.
Right.
And that's what those types of guys are going to be looking for, where you can go to the same pack, and what'd you say, they're Glass House or something?
Yeah.
So you can get Glass House in California, you can get Glass House in Nevada, you can get Glass House in New York, you can get Glass House in Michigan, and it's going to be the exact same product because it's the exact same thing that you were expecting every single time. You get Budweiser from all across the country, it's the same Budweiser. That's the way that I see it as far as scalability. Can you scale to a point and continue to grow high quality flower? I believe so. Like challenge me. Like I dare you to. Like
Yeah, yeah.
say throw me a couple thousand light grow and tell me that I can't do it and watch me do it. And I'll tell
Yeah.
you what is going to be the one driving force behind me. It's the thing we talked about earlier today. It's the team. Team
Yeah.
is set right. The team has the same philosophies, and the team is doing the same shit that you have, and the same outlook mindset that you have, and they're implementing your systems, and they're doing
Right.
things, and everybody's on good harmonious harmony. Then yes, I do believe that scalability. I think I could go anywhere and grow high quality flower. It's in my blood.
So I guess
I,
then you're saying that the glasshouse farms of the world, that ilk, will just have a quality level where they're like, this is enough, basically, and then
Yeah,
that
yeah,
leaves margin for everyone else to.
yeah. And I'm not saying that I can't take a glass house type situation and create that high quality out of it. It's just that if they're doing it to produce $150 pounds, then their inputs are very low. And if their inputs are very low, then they're going to create a product that is a very low product. They want biomass. I want quality. So if you want me to do it for you, then we're going to have to spend a little bit more money, but we're probably going to make a little bit more money too.
Right. That makes sense. I appreciate that. Yeah, because it's just been on my mind because those guys are. I've heard that the pound price per pound here in California is coming up. I was just talking
Yeah.
to some growers at 420, and they were saying the price was coming up, and I said, why is it coming up? And that's where this conversation came in, where he was saying, well, the quality's just not there, and a sizable enough amount, so that's where if you've got the quality, the price is coming up, and then that's where we talked about these
I
big
I
guys.
think I think there's a lot of different factors of the reason that the price is actually coming back a little bit, and it's not
Yeah,
coming back fast or great, or like don't think
right.
that people are going to ever see $4,000 pounds again. Like that's just not there. I think the reason that it's starting to come back a little bit is because the education of the average consumer is getting better, so they understand
Okay.
the difference between a higher and lower quality flower. Yeah, people are distinguishing themselves as either a Budweiser or a craft beer, which is a very big distinguishing, or just it's very distinguishable. When you go to a store, whether you want to spend $10 on a Budweiser or if you want to spend $20 on whatever else, something
Right.
higher end. So it like there's an education, there's a lot more, and then I think there's starting to get the people who were seeing $4,000 pounds and expecting this huge return blow all this money in the cannabis, and they're like, whoop, we screwed up, time to go. And so we're starting to see this exodus a little bit of the people that were in it for the wrong reasons, if you will.
Yeah.
I think that Exodus kind of was maybe a little bit by design, so now they feel like they could maybe come in and start swooping up who's ever's left kind of thing. But I think at the end of the day, the places that allow home grower rights and allow people access like that, it's going to be harder for them to do a complete takeover, like say they did with alcohol and the changing of prohibition back in the 20s and 30s. I do see that we as individual states are all still just waiting, for the feds to finally lay their final cards. And I don't think that this giant stalling has been, not without thought. I also think that you're seeing folks, like, cookies who maybe you thought had some really solid investment situations that maybe they were going to be one of our guys that kind of got through maybe some of that. But as you can see lately, a lot of that is now falling apart. And so that overtaxation, that predatory investing, the crashing market, I mean, all those things were recipes, I guess, at the end of the day, to see who the warriors are. And
Yeah,
at
and
the end of the day, the guy standing and still rocking it, we are the warriors,
hey, Braveheart, just hold, guys. Like
Yeah.
if you're in it and you're like
Yeah.
struggling and you're like trying to get pushed through and you're just like hope it's coming. Just hold. Like give it another year, another 2 years,
Yeah, agreed.
and things will definitely start to water will find its level again.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
analogy that just came to mind was the emperor has no clothes. And then that in that analogy or whatever, I think Burner and Cookies is the emperor, and we're all gonna find out, or we're finding out, that it's all a facade. That their business isn't doing as well as they were saying it was doing, and all this kind of stuff. And dispensaries are closing, and all this kind of stuff.
We touched on this briefly last episode because I totally remember it, but hype only
Yeah.
lasts so long. And
Yeah.
we were talking about it in nutrient companies, but like hype, you're gonna be found out. Like if you're
Yeah.
fake, because there's gonna be too many people buying in that are gonna be like, oh, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when the money, what we're seeing is that the easy money is running out, right? Where the economy changed, interest rates obviously have changed dramatically in the last year, and that's just changed the complete economic landscape for everyone. But cannabis obviously has been impacted by that as well. And so the easy money is not as available anymore. And so just time's running out, and that's where it leaves businesses like you guys, which are building actual businesses that have real demand with strains. You're listening to the market, you're listening to people that actually smoke weed and they buy your stuff.
And they want to get faded.
Yeah, and you're delivering it, right? Those are gonna be the businesses that stand, not the ones that have some like hot IG pics or whatever it is, you know what I mean?
Right, no doubt.
Nice.
Well, awesome. We've had a really great time talking to you, Matt. Were there any questions that Jared, that you wanted to make sure that we hit before we let him go?
No, I mean, that was it. I mean, we covered some good grow talk. We covered some good business talk, some strategies for the future. And I think, like Matt said, we just need to hold strong and keep the plant to the people as much as you can. For the guys like Matt out there who are trying to do, good by the dispensary model, because, it's easy to shit on the dispensary model, but at the end of the day, it services a lot of people and it services a community. So we need to honor that and make that the best possible for these guys. I mean, we think we have it bad, in the trenches. These guys are dealing with bureaucrats, and it doesn't get any slimier than that. So shout out to you guys, Matt, and thank you for coming on the show and being so willing to share everything. I think it's important. That's going to be the thing that helps us all survive, is the way that we share our experiences and get through this.
No doubt, communication is everything.
Definitely. Well, Matt, before I let you go, I was going to say, just echo everything that JR was saying. Really appreciate what Matt has been sharing, how forthcoming and honest he's been, and just all the knowledge that he's shared with us
Are
today.
other people like not as like honest and like?
No,
like,
folks are honest. We built a great place here,
good.
but
That's
we
good.
obviously
Right.
appreciate all the knowledge that you've shared.
I'm not just saying just in the CannaBuzz industry, like just
Yeah.
in general. Like what are we hiding from, guys? Like,
Yeah,
I
know.
We should
I
be a
think that's
collective, not a.
Yeah, we talked about that with Miles from Fermented Plant Extract, and we're from that same school of sharing. You know me; I've been sharing since I started in a tiny little tent.
Yep.
And so it's like that's how we build each other up. And there's enough room for all of us. Obviously,
It's a massive pie. Like everybody
Yes.
deserves a tiny little piece, and that little piece is actually a lot.
It is a lot.
Actually, on that point, what I was going to say was, if you're in Michigan, obviously make sure to look up Matt's stuff and try to find Faded near you, and support his brand. And then I was also going to say, we have viewers all over the world, especially all over the country, all over the US. So if you're in another state, find another grower that you vibe with, like Matt today, and support. Like JR was just talking, there's legal growers out there. Make sure you support these legal farms that are jumping through all the hoops. They're dealing with all the bullshit, the bureaucracy.
Yeah, support the illegal guys too, because they fucking laid the groundwork.
We always say
let's be right there.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying we always say support our local grower, whatever that means. And I'm not trying, but what I'm saying is on both sides. I'm not gonna.
I don't mean illegal. I mean like You know what I mean?
Yeah, a friend or whatever. Yeah, we'll not call ourselves out too much.
Let's support
here.
all growers.
I'm just saying, support all growers. Like I used to say on CannaBuzz, don't narc on yourself. I'm gonna say the same thing to myself right now. And then Also, Matt, give us the shout outs, all right? So
Yeah,
shout
give us
out your IG, your company's IG, website, all those things.
So right now you can find us under Waverly Weed Co. If you're viewing this in the future, it's likely going to be Faded.Mi or some sort of collaboration of Faded.Mi somehow. It depends on what Instagram handles are available, and please don't go and steal that right now. But um, so there's that. Then we have a big shout out to French Formula 2.0. That's Brian. That's our right hand. That Brian does a lot of operational things. Avery, Lil Maeve, she's a killer out there. Jason Dumu Gardens, also another killer. Yeah, so like that's us, man. That's our crew. So that's the shout outs I got. Shout out to fucking JR. Excuse my language. JR for that cherry paloma. I mean, shout out to anybody out there just supporting us. If you're one of those people that are out there and like rebuying our product, thank you very much. You're the reason that we are doing this and the reason that we're still in business.
Sweet, Matt. So am I going to see you at the Dude Girls Cup? I got to put you on the spot.
Man, I'm trying.
At one point of the interview, I got to put you on the spot.
It's like a month away. I just got to book the ticket. I just got to book the ticket. I'll likely be there. Yeah.
All right.
Excellent.
Well, then we'll see you there. I'll be there too.
Oh, yeah.
Finally broke the news to my wife. And it went over fine, so it's all good.
Wonderful.
Well, shout out once again to Matt. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much to all of our live viewers, our CannaBuzz members. They support us every month. If you're not familiar, we've got a CannaBuzz community. It's kind of like a Patreon plus a social network, and those members support us every month and help us keep us going. So shout outs to MacBuds, Cat Lady, James Cannabis, AWOL Gina. We had, let's see, I'm scrolling through here. Big Sips, Big Bad Badger, James Cannabis. We had Psych Doctor. So many of you guys. So thanks, guys, for watching today. We have giveaways every live stream and throughout the month, every month. So join the community. And then, of course, shout out to Terploc, makers of Grove bags. Use the code CannaBuzz for 7% off your next order. Cure your weed to perfection so that it smokes good and it delivers that fine smoke that we've just been talking about. And then, of course, shout out to TikiMadMan at tikiseeds.com. Matt, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this Sunday. We hope you have a kick-ass. We're going to be in May and then we're going to be in May in a couple days, seconds now, it seems like. Yeah. So I hope you have a great kickoff into spring and into summer, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having
me. Stay tuned, everyone. Next weekend, we will have Lance and Ryan from Grove Bags to get a follow-up interview on some sales and global marketing and traveling in the Grove Bag industry. So stay tuned for that. That'll be May 7th at 2 p.m. next Sunday.
Awesome. Well, Matt, as always, great hanging out with you. Shout outs to all of our viewers. Like and subscribe, all the things. And as always, JR, how we end it, we always say, growers love.